Rain hammered the cracked asphalt outside Red Mesa Diner, a lonely stop off Interstate 40 where midnight meant flickering neon, stale coffee, and people who didn't ask questions. Inside, the air hung thick with grease and silence. At the back booth sat Jackson Jax Miller, broad-shouldered, bearded, leather cut heavy across his frame, the kind of man strangers judged before he ever spoke. A former Marine turned Hell's Angel nomad. He carried himself with disciplined stillness, back to the wall, eyes mapping exits out of habit rather than fear. Grief rode with him that night, dark and private, but it was nothing compared to what was about to walk through the door. The bell jingled. A little girl stepped in alone, rain-soaked, pink coat too big for her thin arms, sneakers caked in mud. Conversation stalled. No parent followed. Seconds later, a silver sedan idled outside, headlights cutting through the glass like interrogation lamps. A well-dressed man entered, polished shoes, measured smile, the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to authority being believed. Power had a look. It rarely needed to raise its voice. The girl scanned the room and chose the one man everyone else avoided. She stopped at Jax's table, eyes shining with raw terror. "Please," she whispered, "pretend you're my dad." Across the diner, the suited man's gaze locked onto them. "That's my daughter," he said smoothly. "Stand up and walk away." In a town where badges could be bought and reputations condemned without trial, Jax understood what the room refused to see. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a hunt. And when he rose to his full height, placing himself between the child and the man who claimed her, the balance of power shifted in a way no one inside would ever forget. If stories of unexpected courage and justice in unlikely places resonate with you, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales, because what happened next would expose more than a predator. It would reveal who a hero truly is. The man in the beige raincoat did not rush. He stepped forward with the patience of someone who had never been denied anything in his life. Water dripped from the edge of his umbrella onto the diner floor, each drop sharp in the hush that had swallowed the room. He removed his glasses, wiped them with a folded handkerchief, and placed them back on his face as though this were a minor inconvenience, not a collision waiting to happen. "That's my daughter," he said again, voice even, cultured, controlled. "She tends to panic. I'd appreciate it if you stepped aside." No one in the diner challenged him. Authority has a tone. It smooths the air around it. It tells ordinary people to stay seated. Jackson Jax Miller didn't answer right away. He stayed seated in the booth, massive frame angled toward the aisle, one arm still draped around the trembling child pressed against his ribs. He could feel the rhythm of her fear, quick, shallow breaths, the kind that never fully fill the lungs. Her fingers had curled into the leather at his side so tightly the seams strained. He had felt that grip before. Not from children. From soldiers pinned down under fire. He lowered his head slightly, beard brushing the crown of her damp hair. "Look at me," he murmured. She didn't at first. She stared at the vinyl tabletop like it might open up and swallow her whole. "Kid," he said softly, steady as a metronome. "Look at me." Her eyes lifted. They weren't confused. They weren't stubborn. They were terrified. "Do you know that man?" he asked. A single shake of her head. Final. Across the room, a fork scraped against a plate. The trucker at the counter avoided eye contact. The teenagers had stopped whispering. Even Brenda behind the register had gone still, coffee pot hovering midair. The suited man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She's been having episodes," he explained to the room as if giving a lecture. Her mother filled her head with stories before she passed. "Trauma can do that." The word floated like something rehearsed. Jax's jaw tightened. The girl's nails dug deeper into him at the mention of her mother. There it is, he thought. Not grief. Fear. The man took another step closer to the booth. "Lily," he said gently, extending a hand. "Come here. We're going home." The girl didn't move. Instead, she burrowed closer into Jax's side. Jax finally stood. He didn't explode upward. He unfolded. The booth creaked as his weight shifted. Boots hit linoleum with a heavy, grounded certainty. At full height, he eclipsed the overhead lights, broad shoulders filling the aisle. The cut on his back, the death's head patch, caught the glow of the neon sign bleeding through the window. He placed himself squarely between the man and the child. "You're not taking her," Jack said. The words weren't loud. They were absolute. The suited man's expression cooled a fraction of a degree. "You're interfering in a private matter." Jax didn't blink. "She says she doesn't know you." "She's 7, the man replied smoothly. 7-year-olds say a lot of things. And grown men chase them into diners in the middle of a storm?" Jax shot back. The room flinched at that. Outside, the gray sedan idled in the rain. Its headlights cast long, invasive beams through the window, illuminating the dust in the air like interrogation lamps. The engine didn't turn off. That detail lodged in Jax's mind. No father who finds his missing daughter leaves the car running. The suited man followed Jax's glance toward the window, then back again. His smile thinned. "You don't understand who you're dealing with." Jax stepped closer. "I understand enough." For a split second, something hardened behind the man's polished composure. Not panic, not anger, calculation. He was measuring distance, assessing weight, judging odds. That was when Jax knew this wasn't about custody. It wasn't about embarrassment. It wasn't about a confused child running from discipline. This was pursuit. The girl's voice came out in a whisper so faint it barely carried. "He hurt my mom." Every sound in the diner died. The suited man's jaw flexed. "That's enough," he said, tone sharpening. Jax didn't hesitate now. His arm tightened around the child's shoulders, anchoring her to him. He could feel her heartbeat through the thin cotton of her raincoat. "Yes, fragile, human." "Say that again," Jax prompted gently. She swallowed hard. Tears clung to her lashes but didn't fall. "He stopped the car," she breathed. "He made her get out." The man's patience snapped, not loudly but cleanly. "You're being manipulated," he told Jax. "You think you're playing hero. You're not. You're stepping into something far beyond you." Jax leaned in slightly, lowering his voice so only the man could hear. "I've been beyond before." The words carried weight. They weren't bravado. They were memory. The suited man studied him more closely now. The tattoos, the scars along his knuckles, the steady way he stood. He wasn't dealing with a reckless bar brawler. He was dealing with someone who had survived violence and learned from it. "You have no idea what this costs," the man said quietly. Jax's eyes flicked once more to the headlights outside. The engine was still running. "Waiting." "Yeah," Jax replied. "I think I do." The man's hand slid into his coat pocket. The room tensed. Brenda gasped softly. Jax shifted his weight, angling his body to shield the girl fully. The man withdrew not a weapon, but a wallet. He flipped it open with deliberate calm, revealing a photo. A smiling child on a swing set, ribbons in her hair. "Proof," he said. "That's Lily." Jax glanced at it only briefly. The girl beside him wore shoes worn thin at the toes. In the photograph, the child's sneakers were pristine. Designer brand. Bright white. Money leaves patterns. So does control. "People change clothes," the man pressed. "Fear doesn't," Jax answered. The suited man exhaled slowly, as though deciding something. "Last chance," he said. Jax met his gaze without flinching. "Not happening." The silence thickened into something volatile. Outside, the sedan's headlights flared brighter, as if someone had adjusted the beams. The engine revved. "Whoa." Impatient. The man's eyes flicked toward the door for just a fraction of a second. That was the tell. He wasn't alone. Jax felt the shift instantly. Instinct slid into place like a weapon drawn. He bent down slightly, bringing his face level with the girl's. "You trust me?" he asked. Her answer came without hesitation. "Yes." He nodded once. Then he straightened, shoulders squared, decision already made. The storm outside intensified, rain streaking violently across the glass. The suited man took one final step forward. And Jax stepped forward to meet him. The line had been drawn. What happened next would not stay inside this diner. The air between them didn't snap. Tightened. The suited man let the wallet close with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have. He slipped it back into his coat as though returning a chess piece to the board. Outside, thunder rolled low across the desert, but inside the diner no one moved. The storm felt secondary now. Weather could be waited out. This felt deliberate. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," the man said, voice almost sympathetic. Almost. Jax didn't rise to the tone. He didn't posture. He simply remained where he stood, body angled, shoulder shielding the child without dramatics. His calm unsettled the man more than shouting would have. "You walked in alone," Jax said evenly. No panic. No calling her name. No asking staff if they'd seen her. A flicker of irritation flashed across the man's face before discipline erased it. "I didn't want to alarm her," he replied. "Children escalate quickly." "She already escalated," Jax said. She ran. The girl's small hands had fisted into the back of Jax's vest now. He felt the tremor in her fingers begin to slow, not because she felt safe, but because she was anchoring to something solid. That shift mattered. The suited man took a step to the left, attempting to angle around him. Jax mirrored the movement without thinking. The man's gaze sharpened. "You don't know who I am," he said quietly. "No," Jax answered. "But I know what you're not." A muscle worked in the man's jaw. Across the diner, Brenda finally found her voice. "Sir, maybe we should call the sheriff." "No," the man cut in smoothly, not even turning his head toward her. "There's no need to involve law enforcement in a family misunderstanding." The precision of that interruption landed heavy. Jax registered it. Most fathers, desperate and frantic, would welcome help. They would beg for police presence. They would want witnesses. This man wanted none. The girl's breath caught again, shallow and sharp. Jax felt her inhale against him as if bracing for something invisible. The suited man lowered his voice, directing it solely at Jax now. "You have a destination tonight," he said. "Albuquerque. A memorial service." The words didn't echo. They dropped. Jax didn't visibly react, but something in his chest went cold. That detail wasn't public. Not on social media. Not on a roadside bulletin board. It was club business. "How do you know that?" Jax asked. The man's smile returned, but it was thinner now, stretched too carefully. "Information moves in interesting ways." The implication hung heavy. "You're being watched. You've been tracked." Jax's eyes flicked once more to the sedan outside. The headlights were steady, unwavering. Rain streaked across them in violent slashes, but the beams didn't falter. The engine remained alive, waiting. "You're stepping into something institutional," the man continued softly. "Bigger than you. Bigger than your organization." The pause before the last word was deliberate. He knew exactly what patch Jax wore. He knew exactly what it meant. And he wasn't afraid of it. That was the most dangerous part. The girl shifted slightly, whispering so faintly only Jax heard it. "He knows everything." Jax bent his head just enough to hear clearly. "About what?" "About my mom," she breathed. "About the papers." "Papers." Jax's pulse steadied instead of racing. When fear became concrete, it could be managed. The suited man noticed the quiet exchange. His eyes narrowed, the polite mask beginning to crack around the edges. "She's confused," he said. Her mother was unstable. She fabricated accusations. Paranoia is contagious in children. "Funny," Jax replied, voice gravel low. "She doesn't look confused." The man's tone shifted then. Not louder. Harder. "Last opportunity. Move." Jax stepped forward instead. Not aggressively. Just enough to erase the distance the man had been calculating. The message was clear. Not happening. The suited man's gaze dipped briefly toward Jax's hands. Scarred knuckles. Relaxed posture. No trembling. No impulsive movement. He recalibrated. "This doesn't end well for you," he said quietly. "You think you're defending a child. You're interfering with an operation." The word slipped out before he could catch it. Operation. Not custody. Not parenting. Jax's eyes sharpened. The girl felt the shift in him and tightened her grip again. "What kind of operation hunts a 7-year-old in a storm?" Jax asked. The man didn't answer. Instead he took one measured step back. That retreat wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Outside, the sedan's engine revved once, a low growl that vibrated faintly through the diner windows. Jax caught it. So did the girl. Her body stiffened. "He's not alone," she whispered. The suited man adjusted his coat cuffs with deliberate calm. "This is the final courtesy," he said. "Hand her over now and you walk away. No consequences. And if I don't?" The man's eyes lost all pretense of civility. "Then you become part of the problem." The sentence didn't need elaboration. The room felt smaller. Brenda's hand hovered near the dead landline behind the counter, useless. The trucker had risen halfway from his stool but hadn't taken a step forward. Everyone present sensed the invisible line between civility and violence, and no one wanted to cross it, except Jax already had. He crouched slightly, lowering himself to the girl's eye level once more. "What's your real name?" he asked gently. She hesitated. Then, barely audible, "Sarah." The suited man's expression twitched. There it was. Truth has weight. Jax nodded slowly. "Okay, Sarah." The man moved quickly then, hand slipping inside his coat again. Jax's body reacted before thought caught up. He shifted his stance, angling himself fully in front of her. But the man only withdrew his phone this time. He didn't dial. He didn't speak. He simply held it loosely at his side. Signal. Outside, headlights shifted slightly. A second engine tone blended faintly beneath the rain. Backup. Jax felt the realization settle into his bones. This was coordinated. This wasn't improvisation. The man stepped backward toward the door, gaze never leaving Jax. "You're making a mistake," he said again. "No," Jax replied evenly. "You already did." The man opened the door. Rain exploded inward with a violent gust, blowing cold air across the diner floor. For a moment, his silhouette stood framed in lightning white light from the sedan outside. Then he stepped into the storm. The door swung shut behind him. Silence followed. Not relief. Tension. The sedan didn't drive away. It remained there, idling, watching. Sarah's breathing quickened again. "He's calling them," she whispered. "Who?" Jax asked. Her answer came with trembling certainty. "The men who clean up." The words hung heavier than thunder. Jax didn't waste another second. He reached for the zipper of his jacket, pulling it open wider. "Stay close," he said. Brenda rushed forward now, fear etched deep into her face. "What is this? What's going on?" Jax met her eyes for just a second. "Lock the doors after I leave. Don't open them for anyone. You can't just take her." "She asked me to," he replied. The truth of that silenced her. Outside, the sedan's headlights flared again. And this time, another pair appeared behind it, farther back in the rain. Approaching. Jax didn't hesitate. He scooped Sarah into his arms in one fluid motion, tucking her securely against his chest. Her arms wrapped around his neck instinctively. "Don't let him get me," she breathed. Jax stepped toward the door. "Over my dead body," he answered. And as his hand closed around the handle, the storm swallowed them whole. The diner door slammed behind them, and the night swallowed everything human about the world. Rain didn't fall, it attacked. It came sideways, needling into skin, blurring vision, turning asphalt into a slick sheet of reflected headlights. Jax moved fast but not recklessly, boots splashing through shallow rivers that had formed across the parking lot. Sarah clung to him, her small body pressed against his chest, her breath hot and panicked beneath his chin. Behind them, the sedan's engine deepened. It wasn't revving in anger. It was preparing. Jax didn't look back until he reached the Harley. The machine waited where he had left it, black metal gleaming under fractured neon. He swung one leg over, settling into the seat with the fluid instinct of someone who trusted two wheels more than most people. He pulled Sarah in front of him, wrapping his cut around her small frame, zipping the leather high so the storm couldn't reach her face. "Hold on to me," he said. She didn't answer. She just locked her arms tighter. The engine roared to life beneath them, deep, guttural, defiant. The vibration ran through his spine and into her. For the first time since she had walked into that diner, something in her grip steadied. The bike was loud, solid, alive. The sedan surged forward. No more pretending. Jax kicked into gear and rolled out of the lot just as the gray car lunged from its space. Tires sliced through pooled rainwater. The night fractured into motion. They hit the highway in seconds. Route 66 stretched ahead like a black artery through the desert, its edges dissolving into storm and darkness. Visibility shrank to a narrow tunnel illuminated by the Harley's headlamp. Everything beyond it was guesswork and instinct. The sedan stayed close. Too close. Its beams flooded his mirrors, bleaching out the world behind him. It wasn't tailing casually. It was pacing, studying. Jax leaned forward slightly, lowering his profile against the wind. He felt Sarah's helmetless head press into his chest. He could hear her breath, rapid, uneven, fighting for control. "You're okay," he called over the engine and rain. "Stay with me." She nodded against him. The sedan drifted left, testing, then right, closing distance. This wasn't desperation. It was trained movement. The driver understood angles, understood how to use weight and momentum against something smaller. The car edged closer to the Harley's rear tire. Jax felt it, a calculated nudge without contact. A warning. He adjusted his speed subtly. Not faster yet. Not slower. Just enough to alter rhythm. The sedan matched him. It wasn't chasing blindly. It was hunting. A sudden surge of water pooled across the road ahead, reflecting the storm like shattered glass. Jax saw it at the last second. He leaned hard, shifting weight smoothly as the bike cut through the slick patch. The rear tire fishtailed for a breathless fraction of a second before regaining traction. Behind him, the sedan didn't falter. Its wider stance gave it stability. Another inch closer and a gentle tap from the bumper could send them both skidding into darkness. Sarah's voice broke through the wind. "He won't stop." Jax didn't sugarcoat it. "I know." Ahead the road forked. Left. Open highway exposed and predictable. Right. An unmarked service road climbing into timber and shadow. The sedan pressed closer, almost flush with the rear fender now. Jax made his choice in less than a heartbeat. He feigned left. The car mirrored him instantly, sliding into position to block. Then he snapped right. Hard. Brakes bit. The Harley slid in a controlled drift, rear tire carving a violent arc through water and gravel as he downshifted. Mud exploded beneath them. The bike angled sharply toward the forest path, suspension jolting as it hit uneven terrain. The sedan overshot. Its brake lights flared red as it fought physics, skidding across slick asphalt before correcting with a sharp swerve. For a split second it lost alignment. That was all Jax needed. He gunned the throttle and vanished into the trees. The forest swallowed light whole. The storm muffled sound beneath thick canopy, but the ground turned treacherous instantly. The service road was little more than rutted dirt and loose rock, now transformed into a ribbon of mud. The Harley bucked beneath him. He stood slightly on the pegs to absorb impact, using his legs as shock control while keeping Sarah protected against his chest. branches whipped at his shoulders. The headlamp beam jittered wildly over uneven terrain. Behind them, the sedan followed, lower now, but relentless. Its headlights cut through gaps in the trees, ghost-like and persistent. "Why is he still coming?" Sarah's voice trembled. "Because he thinks he has to," Jax answered. He didn't add what he was thinking. Because someone told him he couldn't fail. The incline steepened. The path narrowed. One miscalculation and the bike would tip, trapping them both. Jax shifted his weight again, guiding the Harley around a washout that had carved deep into the center of the road. The engine strained but held. The sedan's engine tone changed behind them. It was heavier on this terrain, less stable, but still advancing. The forest air grew colder as elevation increased. Pine needles carpeted the road, slick and deceptive. Jax felt the bike twitch beneath him more than once, but he corrected without hesitation. He wasn't riding fast anymore. He was riding precise. Minutes stretched long and distorted. Rain softened to a steady drum under the trees, but mud remained unforgiving. The sedan's lights flickered farther back now, struggling on the incline. Jax finally spotted what he needed, an abandoned forestry turnout just off the main track. A narrow clearing half hidden by brush, barely visible unless you knew how to look. He cut hard left without signaling intention, steering into the shadowed pocket. He killed the headlamp and engine simultaneously. Darkness swallowed them whole. He lifted Sarah off the bike and crouched low behind a fallen log, pulling her down with him. "Don't move," he whispered. They listened. The sedan's engine approached slowly. Closer, closer. Its headlights washed across the main service road, scanning. The beam drifted past the hidden turnout without catching it fully. For a breathless moment, the car idled near the junction. Jax could hear the faint hum of its engine through the trees. Sarah's hand trembled in his. He squeezed gently. The sedan rolled forward, past them. Its lights faded deeper into the forest. But Jax didn't relax. Not yet. He waited, counted breaths, counted seconds. Finally, when the engine noise diminished into distance, he exhaled. Sarah looked up at him, eyes wide in the dark. "Did we lose him?" she asked. "For now," he said. But even as he spoke, something inside him knew this wasn't finished. Predators with resources don't give up after one missed turn. They adjust. He rose carefully and led her toward a small structure at the edge of the clearing, a weather-beaten forestry shed, door hanging crooked but intact. They slipped inside. It smelled like damp wood and rusted tools. Jax shut the door quietly and slid a metal shovel through the handle to wedge it shut. He crouched in the darkness, breathing slow, listening through the storm. Sarah huddled near him, arms wrapped around her knees. He looked at her properly now for the first time since they'd left the diner. Mud-streaked cheeks, wet lashes, but something else too. Resolve. "What did your mom give you?" he asked softly. She reached into her backpack with shaking hands and pulled out a worn teddy bear, its fur matted from years of being held too tightly. "She said if anything happened," Sarah whispered. "This keeps us safe." Jack studied the toy. Then faintly, very faintly, he heard it. An engine. Not retreating. Returning. And this time, it wasn't alone. He met Sarah's eyes. The hunt wasn't over. It was escalating. The engine noise didn't fade this time. Multiplied. Jax didn't move at first. He stayed crouched in the dim shed, every sense tuned to the rhythm outside. The storm had thinned beneath the canopy, but the mountain carried sound differently. Engines bouncing off rock and timber, magnified, directional. One vehicle had been patient. More than one meant intent. Sarah clutched the teddy bear tighter against her chest, as if it were breathing. The fabric was worn thin at the ears, one button eye slightly crooked. It looked ordinary. Fragile. Harmless. "Show me," Jack said gently. She hesitated. Trust takes seconds to ask for and lifetimes to earn. But she handed it over. Jax turned the bear slowly in his hands, feeling along the seams with careful fingers. The stitching on its back was uneven, newer thread against old fabric. Not factory work. Human work. Her mother's work. "You said this keeps you safe," he murmured. Sarah nodded. "Mom said if the wrong people ever found us, I had to give it to the right ones." "What makes someone right?" he asked quietly. She looked at him, eyes steadier now than they had been all night. "They don't look away." The answer landed heavier than any confession. Outside, headlights swept briefly across the trees, pale beams slicing through branches before shifting again. The gray sedan wasn't alone anymore. Two darker silhouettes crept behind it, larger frames, heavier engines. Backup had arrived. Jax didn't flinch. He pulled a small folding knife from his pocket and carefully slipped the blade beneath the altered seam of the teddy bear. He cut slow, deliberate, not tearing, respecting what it had meant to the woman who had hidden whatever was inside. Stuffing parted. His fingers brushed plastic. He reached in and withdrew a compact flash drive wrapped in clear waterproof tape. The kind used to survive rivers. The kind used when survival isn't guaranteed. Sarah watched his face as he unwrapped it. "Is it bad?" she asked. "It's important," he answered. He didn't have a laptop here. Didn't need one to understand what this meant. No one dispatches armed men in the middle of a storm for custody. They come for silence. And this was noise. Side doors slammed. Boots hit mud. Voices carried through the clearing. Low, coordinated, controlled. Not amateurs. Professionals. Jax rose slowly, slipping the drive into the inside pocket of his vest. "Sarah," he said, kneeling in front of her, voice steady but firm. "You need to hide. Under those tarps in the corner. No sound. No movement. Not until I come back for you." Her face drained of color. "You're leaving." "I'm not leaving you," he said. "I'm keeping them away from you." She shook her head once, panic flaring again. "He'll hurt you." Jax's mouth curved slightly. Not a smile, not quite, but something resolute. "I've been hurt before." The engines cut. Silence followed. The kind that hums before violence breaks it. He moved toward the shed door and listened. Rain ticked against metal. Footsteps approached, spreading out. They were sweeping. "Mr. Miller," a voice called from outside, measured, familiar. The suited man. His composure had returned. "You're in a position that won't end well. There are federal implications here. Let's avoid unnecessary damage." Federal. He was escalating language now. Legitimizing himself. Jax stepped out into the clearing. Rain struck his face instantly. Cold. Clean. The gray sedan idled at an angle near the tree line. Front bumper dented from earlier but functional. Behind it, two black SUVs flanked either side of the narrow road. Four men stood between vehicles, silhouettes sharp beneath tactical rain gear. Rifles visible. Posture disciplined. Not street thugs. Contractors. The suited man stood a few paces ahead of them, umbrella discarded now, coat darkened by rain. "You've complicated this," he said calmly. Jax walked forward until he stood in the open space between them. No weapon drawn. No theatrics. Just presence. "You brought rifles for a little girl," Jax said. The man's jaw flexed faintly. "We brought what was necessary." "For what?" "To prevent dissemination." The word slipped cleanly out. There it was. Not custody. Containment. Jax tilted his head slightly. "Of what?" The man's gaze hardened. "Evidence that was stolen. Classified material that doesn't belong in civilian hands." Sarah's voice echoed faintly in his mind. "He hurt my mom." Jax took another step forward. "You mean the kind that exposes you?" he asked quietly. The suited man didn't respond. One of the tactical men shifted his grip on the rifle. The forest felt smaller now. Or heavier. Rain sharper. "You don't understand the scale," the man said. "This isn't a local corruption case. This involves federal judiciary oversight. Organized operations across state lines. And a 7-year-old is your loose end? Jack shot back. The man's restraint thinned. She is leverage, he said before catching himself. Leverage. The word hung like a blade. Jax felt something in his chest go still. Not hot rage, not recklessness, just clarity. Financial records. Internal memos. Encrypted communications linking Judge Franklin Archer to trafficking routes along Interstate 40. Payments. The kind of evidence that doesn't disappear quietly. Within 48 hours, the story detonated across state lines. Federal agents who had once answered to Archer now stood outside his chambers with warrants in hand. Television cameras captured the moment he was escorted out of the courthouse. No robes, no authority. Just a man stripped of power in front of the world he thought he controlled. The suited man from the diner. Identified. Arrested. His calm, cultured demeanor replaced by mugshots and court transcripts. The narrative shifted overnight. The headlines didn't glorify outlaw bikers. They didn't need to. They reported facts. Child survived. A network collapsed. Judge fell. Back at the clubhouse, Sarah watched the news from a leather couch that had seen decades of smoke and silence. She didn't fully understand legal terminology, but she understood one thing clearly. He can't hurt anyone now, she asked. Jack sat beside her, hands folded, gaze steady on the screen. No, he said. And for the first time the answer carried certainty. The legal system moved swiftly under national scrutiny. Prosecutors, real ones, filed charges. Co-conspirators flipped to reduce sentences. Bank accounts froze. Assets seized. The empire unraveled faster than anyone expected. Power, once exposed, rarely survives daylight. A week later, arrangements were finalized. Sarah's aunt in Oregon had been located. Safe, verified, waiting. The morning they prepared to leave, the sky was clear. No storm. No sirens. Just sunlight breaking over desert horizon. Sarah stood beside the Harley, helmet fitted snug this time, pink raincoat replaced with something dry and new. You're really taking me, she asked. Jax nodded. Yeah. He studied the bike. It sounds like a dragon. He smiled faintly. It behaves better than one. When they rode out, the entire charter followed. Not in aggression but in honor. 12 bikes escorting them north, carving a path through red rock and open highway. The journey was long but not rushed. They stopped for food. For gas. For stretches of silence where wind carried away the last remnants of fear. When they reached the coastal town where her aunt waited, the ocean stretched wide and blue under open sky. Sarah climbed off the bike slowly. A woman who looked like her mother ran down the steps of a small yellow cottage, tears already falling. Sarah! The reunion was fierce and immediate, arms wrapped tight, sobs breaking loose after days of restraint. Jax watched from a few steps back, hands resting on the handlebars. He didn't intrude. He didn't claim ownership. He simply ensured arrival. Sarah pulled away from her aunt once and ran back to him. Will I see you again? She asked. He crouched to her height. You won't need me like this again, he said gently. That's the point. She nodded slowly, understanding more than a child her age should have to. She reached up and hugged him tight. I love you, Daddy Jax, she whispered. He closed his eyes for a brief second, letting the words land without armor. Be brave, he told her. She stepped back, then returned to her aunt's side. Jax mounted the Harley once more. This time when he pulled away he didn't look back, not because he didn't care, but because he knew the ending was right. The road stretched ahead under clear sky. Behind him, a child's life had shifted from hunted to hopeful. A corrupt empire had fallen. And somewhere deep beneath leather and steel, a man who once rode without direction finally understood what protection truly meant. The storm had come, and it had broken on the wrong man. The end wasn't quiet. It was earned. By the time the headlines faded, the mountain had already returned to silence. Courtrooms filled, indictments stacked, and men who once moved like untouchable kings stood under fluorescent lights answering questions they could no longer control. The evidence didn't shout. It simply existed. And that was enough. Jackson didn't celebrate. He didn't claim credit. He rode. But something inside him had shifted. For years, he had drifted between loyalty and loss, carrying ghosts he never named. That night in the diner hadn't just placed a child in his path. It handed him a choice. Not about fighting. About standing. About refusing to look away when it would have been easier to. Months later, a letter arrived at the clubhouse. Sarah's handwriting had grown steadier. She wrote about school, about the ocean outside her aunt's window, about wanting to study law someday. To be one of the good ones, she said. Jackson read it twice. Then he folded it carefully and tucked it into the inside pocket of his cut, where the flash drive had once rested. He walked outside, kicked the Harley to life, and let the engine settle into its low, familiar rhythm. The road stretched ahead, open and honest beneath clear sky. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't riding to outrun anything. Some storms don't break you. They show you who you are. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who believes in courage where it's least expected. Like this video, and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales so we can keep telling the stories that remind us what standing up really looks like.